It's no secret that I'm a fan of Rocketbook's reusable synthetic notebooks, having made more than 35 videos to date offering my opinion and a few tips and tricks on their products. However, over the years I've repeatedly seen comments about the standard Rocketbook plastic covers scratching, warping, and either not being professional or expressive enough. While I think the Rocketbook Pro has done a great job of addressing many of these concerns, the company's non-Pro notebooks still use the basic plastic covers. So, over the past few months, I've been experimenting, and I've come up with a new, customizable, and 3D printable cover that I think is a significant upgrade. To start, I've shared my design for these covers freely online with a non-commercial open source license via the Prusa Printables website, so that anyone with access to a 3D printer can download and print themselves a cover. It's also worth noting that I've only released files for the executive and mini size Rocketbooks so far because the letter size covers exceed the printable limits of my current 3D printers. However, I do plan on sharing a letter size version once my pre-order of the new, larger Prusa XL arrives, so stay tuned. Compared to Rocketbook's covers, my 3D printed ones are a little thicker, measuring in at 1.4mm rather than 0.8mm. And that's because I've designed them to be printed with two different materials. A firm PETG core for rigidity that's sandwiched between two layers of rubber-like thermal polyurethane, or TPU. At first, I was a little concerned about the need to thicken the covers in order to make them as stiff as I wanted, but as it turns out, they fit really well within Rocketbook's plastic coil because Rocketbook bindings have always been a little oversized for the number of pages included with each notebook. This means that while the notebooks get a little thicker, the pages actually fill the binding better, not totally eliminating, but definitely reducing the coil's palm interference, something that's a huge pet peeve of mine when it comes to sidebound notebooks. This composite material sandwiching has had some other benefits as well. First, while it is more challenging to print with, TPU has really nice flexibility and durability characteristics that are perfect for a rugged, go-everywhere notebook. The inner surface of the covers is made of two thin layers of solid TPU, which has the right hardness or squishiness so that when you get to the last page of the notebook, your pen doesn't feel like you're writing on a hard surface because the cover deforms slightly as if you were writing on a small stack of paper. On the outside of the cover, rather than printing solid layers of this rubbery material, which would actually make the notebook even more rugged, I opted to use 3D printed infill patterns to provide a small, three-dimensional porous shield, which is what rubs against your desk rather than the hard PETG, reducing the likelihood of small particles getting trapped between your notebook and the desk, which would cause those scratches and rub marks that we see on the plain Rocketbook plastic covers. Oh yeah, and the patterns are an excellent way to differentiate your notebooks. There are plenty of pattern options available, depending on which printer and slicer software you use, but four that I like are the honeycomb, Hilbert curve, gyroid, and triangle patterns, shown here. This porous rubbery coating also provides a little more friction between your notebook and the desk, offering additional stability while you write. Given the strong visual effect created by these infill patterns, I decided to leave the notebook covers fairly minimalistic, with the only other notable feature being a small cutaway logo inspired by a 3D printer nozzle, which is centered on the bottom of the back cover. To install the covers, I used a pair of needle nose pliers to gently pull one of the bent ends of the coil binding to be a little straighter, while heating it carefully with a lighter. This reduces the risk of snapping the plastic coil, but should be done at your own risk. Then, after giving the plastic coil a few seconds to cool, you can unwind it from your Rocketbook. Following this, remove the original covers and replace them with the new 3D printed covers, being careful to align the binding holes. Once aligned, reinsert the coil binding, using your fingers to guide the leading edge of the coil through the holes. Finally, be very careful when rebending the lead edge of the coil, once again using pliers and a lighter to soften the plastic. All things considered, I'm really happy with how this project turned out. I've been using early versions of these covers for a few months now as I've evolved the design, and they've held up really well against the daily use and abuse they take from being thrown loosely in my backpack to transit between home and work. And though the patterning on the outside of the surface doesn't offer the PETG core complete protection against scratches, this design has held up much better than the original plastic Rocketbook covers, which began to show scratches right away. Not to mention, they are very tactile and great conversation starters. From a stiffness perspective, they are a little more flexible than the original covers in order to prevent them from warping over time, but they still work well for both desk writing and on-the-go handheld situations. It's also worth noting that the printed covers are a little heavier than the standard Rocketbook ones, adding about 33% to the weight of an executive core notebook. I'm admittedly biased, but these are small compromises for me compared to the durability, functional, and aesthetic benefits offered by the 3D printed covers. Keep in mind that I've been using high contrast colors for my notebooks, but you're by no means limited to these and could opt for something a little more stealthy like this black on black version if you would prefer that for more professional environments. I won't go into great detail regarding my print settings because I've provided all of the information on the Prusa Printables website, but to achieve the same effect that I have, you'll want to start with the default semi-flex material settings in Prusa Slicer, then use 0 top layers, 5 bottom layers, and a 0.2mm layer height, setting color changes at 0.6 and 1.2mm. That way, the printer will automatically stop after completing the inside TPU layers, allowing you to change to PETG filament and back to TPU again for the final 2 patterned layers. When transitioning from TPU to PETG, you'll also want to manually adjust the Z height of your extruder so that it prints a little higher after your first 2 layers in order to prevent the PETG from clogging the nozzle. Additionally, you'll want to check your filament's recommended print temperature and adjust that manually during the transitions as well, to ensure that you don't over or undermelt the material. This is by no means a set it and forget it kind of print, but if you're willing to experiment a little, I suspect you'll be able to achieve similar results to what I have. Overall, this has been a really fun project that combined my love for 3D printing with Rocketbook notebooks. I hope you've enjoyed seeing it. If you don't own a 3D printer but like these covers enough to have stuck around to the end of this video, don't fret. I'm considering selling some on my Etsy store, so if that interests you, check for a link in the description or shoot me a message on Instagram at jakereeves.reviews or at infillinnovations. Otherwise, if you found this video interesting, hit the like button, consider subscribing, and I'll see you next time.